As a prank, you ordered something off the menu in a restaurant. Unbeknownst to you, the place is actually a front and you have just identified yourself as a top-level agent. The waitress raised her eyebrows and looked at me, wide-eyed. I understand, sir, she stuttered, but still she continued to stare. Had I inadvertently made some kind of sexual innuendo? Was the swordfish sold out? Was this waitress, who must have been no older than 22 years old, having a stroke? Is everything okay with my order? I asked in an effort to break what had become a painfully elongated silence. I can go for the place if the swordfish is a problem. It's not the swordfish, sir. The swordfish is fine. Delicious, in fact. She glanced at my colleague, whose face looked as perplexed as I imagined mine currently did. Then her gaze darted back to meet mine and, for the second time in as many minutes, I found myself staring at this girl in awkward, suffocating silence. Then she spoke once more. To clarify, you want the swordfish, with dauphinoise potatoes, the shallots, a medium glass of New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc and kamashi swallowed, and you'd like that all to be kept away from any nuts because you are mildly, not strongly, but mildly, allergic. Is that all accurate, sir? That's great, thank you, I said, breathing a quiet sigh of relief and handing her my menu. But she didn't take my menu. Nor did she appear to write any of this down. I'll be right back, sir. Thank you. With that, she turned on her heel and scurried away with a sudden and inexplicable urgency. Well, what the Sigma was that about? Exclaimed Jason, whose order hadn't even been taken. She didn't even ask me what I wanted. I know I've gained a few pounds, but a man still has to eat. A muted commotion was unfolding behind him. I stared past his left shoulder and towards the corner of the restaurant, to find the waitress whispering conspiratorially to a suited man who I assumed was her superior. Both had their hands cupped around their mouths. Have I turned invisible? Has Jason Lowton finally gained a superpower? Jason was angry. He was always angry when he got hungry. The suited man nodded a few times more and, after some vague pointing in our direction, began to make his way to our table. Perhaps the swordfish was sold out, after all. As he approached, Jason swung around and threw up his hands. Finally, he called out, "I'll have the lobster, and make sure it's the biggest lobster in the house." The man didn't acknowledge him, but instead brushed past him and stood close enough to me that I could smell the dusty musk of his black trousers. He placed a hand on my shoulder and bent down to whisper in my ear. "Sir, this place isn't safe. Do you trust Jason? Say place for yes and lobster for no. Do not look at him." How did he know Jason's name? "Place," I replied, out loud so Jason could hear. Jason looked furious. The man bent back down and whispered once more. "You shouldn't, Agent. Get out. Get away from him." With that, he grinned at me, then turned to look at Jason. "Your lobster is on its way, sir," he smiled. Then he walked back to the corner to talk to the waitress, who had been watching the entire conversation unfold. Jason looked at me, confused, angry, but with a hint of satisfaction that his order had finally been acknowledged. "What did he say to you?" he asked. "And why did he need to whisper?" "It's not a bloody library." I studied Jason. The lines on his oily brow. The day-old stubble protruding from his shirt collar and patching its way up to his reddened cheeks. As I looked, Jason gulped in a way I'd never seen him gulp prior to this evening. Was this man trustworthy? "Oh, he told me the swordfish was out and asked me what I'd like instead. He said there's a journalist sat behind me and he didn't want him to catch on that they had sold out of their flagship dish." "Oh," said Jason. Was that a look of relief? Weird. I hope they hurry up with that lobster. That's when I saw it. Only for a fleeting second. Jason puffed out his chest and glanced at his watch and, as he did so, a bulky, hard object pushed itself against the inside of his suit jacket, protruding above the natural fall of the fabric for a short moment. But it was enough. Was that a gun? It might just be hip flask. No, too fat for a hip flask. Perhaps it was his wallet? No, his wallet was on the table. "Jason, I think I have to leave. I've just remembered nobody is picking up Chloe from school. Sandra's working late. This one's on me, mate, enjoy the place. Sorry, I'll see you Monday." I began to stand. But Jason didn't look surprised or embarrassed by the sudden change of plan. Instead, he placed his palms either side of the cutlery in front of him and shook his head slowly, looking down at the tablecloth. "Sit. Back. Down." He spat, quiet enough that surrounding tables wouldn't hear, but loud enough to stop me dead in my tracks. I stared at him. My heart began to thud so hard that I felt it might betray me just as his gun had betrayed him. I laughed uncomfortably. "What do you mean, mate?" "Don't worry, Daniel. Chloe's already been picked up. We picked her up ourselves." He patted the lump in his suit jacket and looked at me knowingly. "Now, sit back down. We've got some talking to do."